Welcome into episode 50 of the Josh Hendrickson Show. I'm Neal McCready, joined by Josh Hendrickson, Chair of Economics at the University of Mississippi, otherwise known as Ole Miss. It's been, it was pre-Thanksgiving the last time we got together. We've been busy. You've been busy. I've been busy. How you doing?
Fortunately, nothing has really happened since then.
No, it's been pretty quiet. There's a thread on the board today where a guy goes, "Is it Christmas vacation?" basically. And I'm like, wait, what? And you think, I literally was thinking to myself, I was like, when was the last time I was like, took a day, just a complete day? And I think it was Maine. The open date in early October was the last time that I had a full day of where nothing happened at all. I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. And it was like, wait, well, why would you? It's just Wednesday.
Yeah.
And I think what it is if you were following the Lane Kiffin epic, it was so nonstop that now that things have slowed a little, it feels like nothing's happening at all. And it's like, no, because I had to think to myself, we've been writing, haven't we? And like today, we broke a story about the football schedule for 2026, and I did a mailbag, and we had stuff, but it's just I get it.
Yep.
It slows down, and when it slows down, you're like, oh, there's nothing going on. Like, what are they doing? Are they just on a cruise? What's going on? So I get it. I completely understand. What were your thoughts on? I'll go here. I'm curious. You and I've really we have not talked about this. I think you're the only person on earth that I have not talked about this with. As it unfolded, what were your thoughts on the Lane Kiffin epic?
The reason you haven't talked to me about this is I deliberately try not to talk to you about this because I know that everybody else is trying to talk to you about it. And so I don't, I have a few thoughts. Lane hasn't texted me yet, so we'll see.
I can send you his number or I can say it and I'll send it to him. I'll make the cut and send it.
Yeah. My general impression is that I never felt like Lane thought that he could win here consistently. Now, I thought that Lane could win here consistently. And so in my mind, the first few years I expected okay, they're going to have a really good season and then he's going to and he's going to go, or they're going to have a couple of good seasons in a row and then he's going to go. And that was kind of my expectation at the beginning. But then kind of when he stayed after the whole Auburn thing, I started thinking the longer that he stays here, the longer he might actually be here, right? Because if he starts to win consistently, then maybe that will convince him that he actually can win consistently and he'll stick around.
Yeah.
But it was sort of very obvious to me what was going on for a long time. I think the only reason that I had any doubts in my mind is that there were just certain people who I know who would have more information than me that would occasionally be like, well, I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. And so I was like, well, okay. But it seemed pretty apparent to me. I think that the whole Lane Kiffin documentary on ESPN, I think I had a different perspective. That actually concerned me a lot.
Yeah.
When I saw it, because it was not. I think people around here were kind of disappointed that it didn't focus as much on Ole Miss, and I think the response at the time to that was, well, of course it wouldn't. There's a whole lot to tell. You only have an hour. And so the Ole Miss part is sort of the redemption part. And so you spend a bunch of time on all the controversy, and then at the end you tie it all together with a happy ending. And I kind of interpret it differently, which is that this was a commercial for Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
And so if it's a commercial for Lane Kiffin, then the question is why does Lane Kiffin want a commercial for Lane Kiffin? And the obvious answer is he would like another job. The only thing and the only rational reason that I thought that because it was obvious to me that he was leaving.
Yeah.
But the only thing that gave me a little bit of pause is I played sports my entire life. And there's the good coach, the competitive coach, the guy who really cares about his players. What they always emphasize to you is like team is bigger than the individual,
Yeah.
like all of these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff made me think, well, look, if they make the playoffs, he might just have no choice.
It's the one thing that stopped me from going completely. Well, two things stopped me. One, there was a day, and I don't remember exactly when it was, but a person asked in the stream or asked on the message board, hey, no nuance, no context, nothing. Just if you had to answer this right now, and the question is, will Lane Kiffin, will he or will he not be, yes or no, the coach at Ole Miss next year? You can't provide any context. You have to give an answer. So I thought about it. And this was before the LSU stuff really heated up. And I said no. And I watched the and I went, whoa, you can't do this anymore.
No.
You got to be careful here. And then the other thing that stopped me was just that. I was like, he definitely wants to leave. He definitely likes these two jobs, one in particular. But is he really going to leave a team in the playoffs? And that's why I said that week of the Oklahoma game, I mean, I've been around people long enough, right? Like, if you have, I don't know how much experience you've had with this, but I've been dumped a few times. You can usually see it coming. I saw the look in Lane Kiffin's eyes after that Georgia game, the way he answered questions. And I'll remember getting in the car and drive back to my hotel in Brazelton or wherever it was. And I told Chase, I said, he's leaving. He's gone. And I said, this Oklahoma game is the most consequential game that he'll coach. And it turns out I was wrong because it didn't matter. Because if they'd lost, they weren't making the playoffs. And if he didn't make the playoffs, he's gone, right? But I did keep thinking in the back of my mind, if he does make the playoffs, sorry, Jim Mora, playoffs. If he does make the playoffs, maybe he stays. And so I was like, got to be careful here because in our position, Chase and I, in fact, we talked about this just today. You can't get that wrong.
Yeah.
Can't get it wrong. You can't say he's leaving, he's gone, and then he stays.
Yeah.
Because even though contextually something may have happened to change it, the way fans are, as emotional as they are, as tribal as they are, no way. You couldn't recover from it, especially in my shoes where you're the one that's covering the school objectively. You couldn't get away with that. And so I had to be careful with it. But I thought in the moments after the Oklahoma game, the way that he behaved, the way that he said, things that he said, I thought he's leaning towards going. And then the night that they beat Florida, his answers in that post-game press conference were just not the answers of someone who might even be considering staying. From that point forward, I was like, he's gone. Everything we did from that point forward behind the scenes was getting ready for next.
Now, my thing with him was I think I had a different perspective on this than most people. You and I kind of actually did talk about this, but it was so long ago in the saga that, and I don't know that it counts. I felt like I completely understood what was happening. And the reason I thought that I completely understood what was happening is that about 5 years ago, I had an amazing opportunity presented to me, and I really wanted to do it. But there were a variety of reasons why there was no way that I would be able to make it work. But I also remember the emotions that you have around that, right? So at first you're like really excited, right? And you're kind of like, okay, I've got this opportunity. This is really cool. Like I can't turn this down. This is what, like, this is this is a great thing. But then you kind of start to realize like this won't work. Like it just won't work. Like I can't do it. But before you actually accept that, you go through this period of sort of bargaining where you start saying to yourself, well, maybe I can. Like maybe I can do it. Like maybe I can just figure this out. Like maybe if I do this, like it'll be fine.
What
or
if,
like maybe
what if this?
Yeah. And so I really felt like I could understand what he was going through for a very long time. Now, ultimately, I did not take that opportunity. And I didn't take the opportunity because the timing was wrong.
Yeah.
And the reasons why I really couldn't take it were family reasons. And so to me, the way that I looked at it is that like as a husband and a father, my first priority is to my family. And even though there might be this professional opportunity that might be amazing, like I cannot do something that's going to harm. Harm is not the right word, but that's not going to work, right? Or that's going to make it. It's going to make it much harder.
You put team in front of me.
Yeah, and so I kind of felt like I understood him, and I think that's why I kind of thought like if he wins, like he's gonna go through this where he's like I really want this job, I want to go, but like I can't do it. What I didn't realize is that like the bargaining stage that you have in your head, like this guy just decided like, nah, I'm just gonna do that.
Yeah.
Like, so we're just gonna let's just bargain. Let's just let's just see. And I think that was completely ridiculous. And I think and then that completely turned me off because to me, abandoning your team when they're on a historic playoff run, like that sort of like defeats the whole point of sports, right? Like that's what you're in it for. You're in it to win championships, but like part of the reason why you're excited when you win championships is like you're surrounded by these guys that you competed with like all year round and you've bonded and you have this relationship and now you have this like permanent bond where you've accomplished something and you've accomplished something nobody else thought that you could do. And you share that together. And to basically just be like, well, I hope you guys get that feeling. I'm going to be down here on the bayou, right? Like to me, that was just, it was completely insane. And I think that was the hardest thing for me is like, it was a sort of, even though I knew all along, like this guy is leaving, there was that part of me that when I thought of it like that, I was like, at the end of the day, like he's going to be really upset, but like he's not going to be able to go because he's not going to want to give up on these guys.
Yeah.
And then but then it became very clear that like, oh no, actually he is totally just going to abandon them if they won't let him, coach the playoffs and take the job or whatever. And so to me, it was bad. But let me say something important. I want to say something super important.
Okay.
About the University of Mississippi. I've been at the university for 15 years. And one of the things that I was kind of most proud of in this sort of scenario is like the leadership at the university. And the reason I say that is when I got here 15 years ago, like this is not universally true. So people don't send me nasty emails about this. This was not universally true, but there were a lot of people, or at least I felt like there was. Yeah. There were a lot of people who thought the University of Mississippi just like we have our place in the world and it's here and that's all we're ever going to be and we can never be any better than that and that's just what we're going to do and that's where we're going to be.
And if you challenge that, you got eviscerated.
Yeah, and so and that aggravated me. It aggravated me in sports, it aggravated me in academics, like it aggravated me because it was like first of all in sports, like academics it's a little bit harder because like the thing about athletics is that like the way I describe how Ole Miss was when I got here is like it was a school that didn't realize they played in the SEC. I understand that like historically, like Ole Miss didn't have the resources of the other SEC teams, but once you got into the modern era with TV contracts and all that stuff, like all that went out the window.
Yeah,
like you could be the team that had the 10th most resources in the SEC and you still had like the 13th most resources in the country, right?
Right.
And so that was my attitude like when I got here is like why don't they act like that? Like why don't they act like that? Like why aren't they trying to be on that sort of level? And and so the one thing that I sort of hand it to leadership about is that, like, the way things were handled today is not how they would have been handled in a previous era. I really believe that. Like, I really believe in there's a previous era of Ole Miss football where they totally would have let him coach in the playoffs.
No question about it.
And
zero question.
Yeah. And to me, the thing is that, like, this whole thing, both on the Ole Miss side and with respect to Lane Kiffin, is this whole thing is about leadership. Mm-hmm. The whole thing is about leadership. And so, like, part of the thing with leadership is that, like, you have to have people who will follow you where you're going. Like, that's an important component of leadership. But also, you got to be going somewhere. Otherwise, what are you leading, right? Like, and so, like, if you're just if you're leading and you think we have a ceiling, like, you're just going to be mediocre, because whatever that ceiling is, that's what you'll always be. And so you cannot have a ceiling. You have to have aspirations. Now, they have to be realistic aspirations, but you have to have aspirations. You have to have, and you have to have people who have a plan to get you there. You have to have a people who are willing to make the hard decisions to get you there. You have to have the people who are willing to stand up and say, no, we're better than this.
Yep.
And I think, to me, that was the most important thing about this whole thing. It was the contrast in leadership. It was the contrast in leadership. Because, to me, the biggest thing about Lane leaving is I can't possibly imagine achieving what he achieved this year and just walking away and wishing people the best. Like, I can't imagine that at all. And here's the thing, like,
because most people can't.
No,
like,
it's
like most. Can I interrupt and give a sports comparison quickly? I'm a big NBA fan. Really love it. And last year, probably the two teams that I followed the most over the course of the season ended up playing each other in the finals. And Tyrese Halliburton had a calf strain. And calf strains for elite, explosive athletes, and he's one, there's a danger. Always. And the doctors told him before game 6, you are running the risk. And they told him again before game 7. And he took that risk. And he did it for his teammates. He did it for his team. He did it for himself, sure. But he did it for his team. Because he had every excuse in the world to go, oh, man, I just made the U.S. Olympic team. I'm at the top of my game. I'm one of the best players in the world. I'm only 25. And, I mean, I don't know that pragmatically anyone could fault him if he said, in fact, Kendrick Perkins was on ESPN saying he should not play. It's too dangerous. He played, and he tore his Achilles. He's missing a season, and there's no guarantee he'll ever be the same player again. On the other side, Jalen Williams, Santa Clara Jalen Williams, not the Arkansas Jalen Williams. 3rd team All-NBA, 22 years old, stud. Has an effed up wrist, for lack of a better word. And he does it in April. And not only does he not talk about it ever publicly, not one time, because if you talk about it, NBA guys are going to know it's hurt and they're going to start fouling on that wrist, right? He re-engineers his shot, puts off the surgery, never complains, has several bad games in the playoffs where people are like, Jalen Williams, he's not clutch. Never says it. Takes it. For what? For the team. For his team. Yeah, for himself, but for his team. And he would have had every reason to, in April, go, I can't play the way I normally play. Let's do the surgery. I'll be ready for next year. Because to get all NBA honors, you have to play in 67 games. You can only miss 15 games. And all NBA honors means money. Literal escalators in the way the CBA works. Well, he missed the first 18, 19 games of the season. So he's not going to get those awards. And because he re-engineered his shot, he's having to go back and undo that and re-engineer his original shot and admit that, hey, because I did the surgery so late, I haven't gotten used to how my surgically repaired wrist feels. And when you play basketball, wrists matter, right? You and me, we could screw up our wrist and we could still perform our everyday activities. But my point is those guys did that for their teams when they had every reason to put their careers first. Every reason. 25 years old, 22 years old, the beginning of the big money. I mean, these guys make money. And both Tyrese Halliburton and Jalen Williams are money makers down the road if they don't have catastrophic injuries. And they did. They put their teams first. They put their teams first. And it was the part of this, and it's the part with Kiffin that I think will forever haunt him, unless he just goes and wins like 6 titles or something at LSU. Is how do you look a team in the eye? How do you look your team in the eye, future team, and go, hey, you got to put. There's no I in team. You got to put team in front of yourself. Well, you didn't, right? I mean, if Tyrese Halliburton says that to a teammate, that teammate has to go, yeah, I mean, I get it, right? If Jalen Williams says to a teammate, hey, man, come on. What is your response going to be? Well, you did it. And again, you did it for glory. Don't get me wrong, but you had every reason. And Lane Kiffin would have gotten glory too. So it's fascinating.
It's a contrast. It's a contrast. So the big lesson is a contrast in leadership. I think the university has much better leadership now than it has in any time since I've been there. I think that, and I think that Lane demonstrated a lack of leadership. But even more importantly, I promise I'm not trying to get a text. More importantly, you know why everybody turned on him? Do you know why this completely went south? Is because what he did showed a lack of virtue.
Yeah.
The thing about sports is like that's actually what we reward virtue, sacrifice, bravery, right? Like sure. When you think back on famous stories of the past, whether it's sports, whether it's history, whether it's anything, whether it's literature, what's the story? It's always the story of the person who is virtuous. It's always the person who is virtuous, like who is leading people to a better place, leading people to victory, leading people to whatever. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's what we as a society value. We value virtue over anything else. That's what we value. And what this demonstrated is just the complete absence of virtue.
Yeah.
It was in fact, I mean, it was in some sense, it's sort of cowardice. Like to walk away at the end is sort of cowardice, right? Because you're like whether you would admit it or not, what you're implicitly doing is you're implicitly saying like, I mean, how far were we going to go anyway?
Yeah.
That's what you're implicitly saying.
I can only take this thing so far, man.
And so that's the fundamental problem. The fundamental problem is that people, if you are virtuous, like people will follow you to the ends of the earth. Like they will, like people will do amazing things for you if you are that person. But the second that you demonstrate that you're not that person, that all that goodwill goes away. Yeah. All of that admiration goes away because you reveal that you reveal a level of selfishness that's just, it's not admirable at all.
All right, so we'll use virtue as a way to transition to from one virtuous person to another. We'll go from beating up on Lane Kiffin to beating up on Tim Walz. The governor of Minnesota was deeply offended by a tweet. It has led to a cavalcade of vehicles driving past the governor's mansion in Minnesota, yelling the R word at him. He cannot escape this. It is preventing him from doing his duties as the governor of the great state of Minnesota, where you're trying to get a lot of things done in Minnesota on a daily basis. And I'm gonna tell you my working theory here. And I believe this. I really do. People are calling me because Michigan fired its football coach today. Sharon Moore apparently allegedly had an improper relationship with a subordinate. It'll get you every time, boys and girls. Undefeated. Speaking of, I think the problem people have is that they are intimidated by Walz. I really do. I think what happens with Walz, honestly, is he's just such a man's man that I think people they overlook his intellect because of his brawn, his courage, his I mean, you think of Teddy Roosevelt, you think of Ronald Reagan, and then you think of Tim Walz. Men's men. People who hear an insult and just let it roll off their sleeves. I mean, imagine what it would be like if he weren't bothered by the insult and all of these people driving by his governor's mansion. Because that's what people do. You just take the car, you drive by the governor's mansion, and you roll down the window and you yell through the open windows at the governor of Minnesota, who's just in there governing. That's what happens. And it's a damn shame is what it is.
This man's ability to see a rake on the ground and always step on it is the most amazing talent that I've ever seen in my entire life.
To step on it just perfectly.
Yes, just every time.
Every time.
Every time. And it's just, these people don't learn. You know, like Trump tweets a lot. Trump says insulting things in tweets.
He does.
Okay?
He does.
There's very little that you can kind of do about this, right? Because the people who love Trump, right, they love that about him, that he's just going to say whatever he's going to say, right? The people who don't like Trump, they're going to hate it because they hate everything that he says. And then there are some people who kind of like Trump's governing and don't like his tweets that are kind of like, please stop doing that. But the thing is that if he insults you like that, the proper thing to do is just to take the moral high ground and just like ignore it, like not acknowledge it, act like it doesn't bother you at all.
Or make a joke.
Yeah, exactly. And instead, what he does is he makes up a story that's obviously false about how people are driving past his house, shouting this word out at him as they drive by, all because of this tweet. And it's like, no, and what that does is then what you saw on is you just scroll his feed. Just scroll his Twitter feed. He will post things and people just keep responding to him with pictures of cars lined up.
It's absurd.
They they just like
there's presumably security there. Right. There's cameras. Nobody is driving in front of the governor's mansion of the state of Minnesota and yelling the R word loud enough for the governor of Minnesota to hear it.
And so what he's done is he's created this ridiculous narrative that's obviously fake. And so now people are just mocking him relentlessly on social media because they know that it's false. So now you've taken this insult and now you've empowered people to actually just like completely laugh at your expense.
You've made yourself a meme.
Yes.
As opposed to the man who ran against him for vice president of the United States. I realize we don't vote that way, but they were both on the ballot.
Right.
J.D. Vance. Someone tweeted a photo of it was Thomas Clay Jr., who I don't know who that is. He says, looks like things are not so good in Republicanistan. Usha Vance is a liberal, always has been. Apparently they were having an argument. He says an argument. He meant an argument. Loud enough to quiet the restaurant. Why is he wearing a T-shirt? And it shows someone who does, in fairness, look a lot like J.D. Vance and might very well be J.D. Vance. And if that's the case, then it's been photoshopped. having a conversation with a woman who may very well be Usha Vance. You can't really tell from the photo whether that's her or not because you don't see any facial features at all. And J.D. Vance quote tweets the tweet and says, "I always wear an undershirt when I go out in public to have a fight loudly with my wife." That's how you handle that.
It's exactly how you handle it. You make a joke out of it and you make it look ridiculous. And you don't make up a story about like how you just, like how, people are dropping off, undershirts at your house or something like that. Because, I mean, like it's just
because if you get offended by it, next thing you know, every photo of you is being photoshopped with you wearing a t-shirt. And suddenly you're the guy that wears the white t-shirt, right, even though you're not the guy that wears the white t-shirt.
And he's done this like repeatedly. Like there were all these memes when Trump first got elected where people were making memes of JD Vance and making his face look really fat and stuff like that. And then like giving him like, curly hair and like all these things. And then he started posting them.
Yeah.
And he started like embracing it. For Halloween, he dressed up like the meme and went around with his kids dressed up like the meme. Like that's how you diffuse these things, is like people are trying to make fun of you and you make a joke about it. But like Tim Walz is like, no, I see an opportunity here. I'm going to fabricate a story to make myself look super sympathetic. Everyone will believe it. Now, in fairness, I mean, it does sound like his wife leaves the windows open so she can smell burning tires during the riots in Minneapolis. So, it's possible that they could have heard things being yelled from a car, since they don't want to close the windows. They want that they want to just smell that horrid polluting smell.
Well, this from being a Midwesterner, everyone in December who lives in Minnesota just leaves their windows open. I mean, it's 10 degrees outside.
Right.
That's when you open the windows and you let all the fresh winter air in. Everyone does it. And again, you live in the governor's mansion of the state of Minnesota. You probably have security. Guessing? At least a modicum of security. There are likely cameras. And if you could prove this claim of people driving by in their automobiles, rolling down their windows, and as they pass, yelling some version of that slur at you, you would think that you would be able to release those videos. To date, no one has released those videos. It's because they don't exist.
In fairness, I think the state of Minnesota is running out of money.
Well, I mean, there's a Somali joke in there somewhere, but I'm trying to resist the urge. It's been a rough time for Minnesotans. Gophers had a rough year. Vikings are having a rough year. Twins didn't have a great year. T-Wolves lost in the Western Conference Finals. I don't know about the Wild. I don't know what their hockey team does. Been a tough year.
I think the general problem...
What they need is more Somalians.
I think the general problem is that
are they good at hockey?
I don't think they play hockey.
Okay.
But see that this is the thing. The Somali story in Minnesota is absolutely wild. Because there have been multiple stories of just complete and utter abuse of government programs. So, there was a program, during COVID when the schools were closed, there was a program where you could go pick up lunches. And you could go pick up lunches because, some kids, that's where they get their lunch is at school.
Yep.
And so they created a program that's like, well, you can go pick up a lunch and that will, and so, you can still get the lunch every day. You just have to go pick it up. And won't that be nice? And so, nonprofits, they can just set this up and the government will reimburse them for it. So, you go out and you serve meals to the community and the federal government will cover it. They will send you money, to help you cover the cost of providing these meals. So it turns out that was one scam. This one scam is that people found out that within the Somali community, one of the things that they were doing is like completely over-reporting how many lunches they were providing.
I'm shocked.
So that, they were just generating tons of money through that program. That's not reimbursement for providing meals, which is it was just money that they were allegedly providing meals and then collecting the money on the back end.
I'm shocked.
So that's one scandal. There's a separate scandal where it appears that some of these people were getting food stamps, but then they were also like opening restaurants. And so they would open a restaurant, they would be on food stamps, and then they would go use the food stamps to buy the ingredients for the food that then they were going to make at the restaurant and then sell to people and serve to them. There's another program. There's another program in which they set up autism centers, and were bringing their children and having them diagnosed with autism, like on purpose, in exchange for kickbacks, because the center would get money, and so because the center gets money for everybody that they're treating, they were just paying people to come in and bring their children, and then giving them a fraction of the money to do that. So like, there's a massive level of corruption and theft going on in the state of Minnesota. In
fairness, if the governor could allow his security and the people around him to go investigate this instead of having to protect them from the cavalcade of cars, I mean, maybe we'd get more done.
Yeah. But this is the fundamental problem and this is what was always going to happen with this immigration story. Is the immigration story is actually, yes, it is about immigration, but it's also about an insane level of corruption. So there are these schemes like this that are going on. And people have pushed back on this and said, oh, like Somalis are being unfairly targeted for this. Okay, well, you know what? There's also there are also some of these same sorts of scams that are being run in Maine by Somalis. Okay, so like the idea here that you're singling people out, if it's happening in multiple states, that's not it. And the issue here is this highlights sort of every single thing that the immigration debate has been about from the beginning, that people are that frankly a lot of people have been unwilling to see or think about or debate or any of these things.
I'm laughing at the stream talking about, I'm sure you saw the video, the mayor.
Yes.
Minneapolis sampling Somali food. Yes. He clearly disagreed with his taste buds. But he had to put on a brave face.
You've never seen an adult play with his food more than he did in the video. Like, just he moved that food around the plate like 75 times in 15 seconds. Just like desperate to try to create a hole in the plate, like that would just like swallow all of this food.
I don't even know what Somali food is.
No, I don't even know what it is either, but clearly he was not a fan.
Carry on. I will look up Somali food real quick. What makes it unique?
But this is the thing about the immigration story is that, yes, like we've talked about issues related to immigration and like what should our immigration policy be and like how do people integrate into society and like, how well do certain groups assimilate and other groups not assimilate and all these other kinds of things. And all of that stuff is important. But there's this lower level to this. And the lower level sort of betrays everything that sort of gets commonly told to you in the public debate. Like the public debate is always like, like people are coming here, they're not getting any government assistance, right? Like they're here for the American dream. Like they're much less likely to use government assistance, all of that kind of stuff. And what you realize is like there's a lot of corruption going on. There's a lot of corruption going on. Sometimes it's among the immigrants. Sometimes it's among the people who are bringing them in. So, one of the things, that really triggered this debate is that, when we were talking about the eating of the dogs and the cats in Ohio during the election cycle,
yes.
The dogs and the cats got all the attention. But what the real story is that, the local news that was covering this was like digging into some of this stuff. And then what they were realizing is like, hey, you know what? Like all of these politicians are like somehow indirectly like profiting from having all of these immigrants move in, right? Like, so maybe their wife runs an NGO that helps resettle these immigrants, and so her entire salary is predicated on bringing in more and more immigrants. Or maybe the mayor happens to own a bunch of housing, and who is renting the housing but the immigrants who he helped bring into the city, and the immigrants are paying for it with the assistance of money that they've received from the government. And so you had all of this going on, and that's the fundamental problem here. And this is the reason why, try as they might, like Democrats can't really gain traction on this issue, is because the further that you dig into the issue, like the worse that this actually gets. The more corruption that you reveal, like the more problems that you reveal. Because the other thing about the Somali thing is like, it's not just that they were doing this, but like City Journal's report said, like, look, they're not only manipulating all of these systems to to like enrich themselves, but they're taking some of this money and they're sending it back to their country to like fund a terrorist group. And so when you start to get into that, naturally, right, as more and more details come out in every single one of these scenarios, you just get to the point where like the American people just look around and go, what the hell? Like, what is happening? Like, who, like how is all of this stuff happening and like no one knows about it?
I just enjoy the media coverage. CNN's headline: anxiety grips Somali community in Minneapolis. Think about that, boys and girls. There are Somalis that are accused of perpetrating, there's evidence, a financial scam to steal taxpayer dollars to send back to Somalia to fund a terrorist group. That should be the concern. Okay? Like when we're evaluating, okay, what is it involved in the story that we should be concerned about? It's that. Unless you're CNN. Anxiety grips Somali community in Minneapolis. What are they anxious about? Precisely. If you didn't do anything wrong, what are you anxious about? That you're going to have to eat cambulo? Which, by the way, it's actually a dish called ambulo, sometimes referred to as cambulo. To use. The meal consists of boiled adzuki beans mixed with wheat berries, sugar, and spices. I mean, doesn't sound appealing to me, but I'm not.
Or Jacob Fry.
Or Jacob Fry. Earlier, he also is believed that he was served a plate of goat meat and rice at the 24 Somali Mall while discussing community issues. So he did this twice. He went to two different places to get photo ops, because it's very important that you appease the anxiety, alleviate the anxiety of the Somalian community in your city that you're the mayor in, instead of, I don't know, maybe discovering how they perpetrated the scam, punishing them for perpetrating the scam, and seeking retribution for the money that was sent back to Somalia to fund a terrorist group.
I think there's also like a broader lesson here that maybe people don't want to hear. And that is, I don't think it's a coincidence that this happens in Minnesota. Because do you know there are places who have had similar issues, and in Europe, and those places are, we collectively refer to those places as Scandinavia. And if you know anything about Minnesota, you know that they have a massive Scandinavian population. That's where, many of them came from. And this is the issue. This is the fundamental issue. This is the thing that like you're not allowed to talk about, is that when we think about immigration, right? Like we're taught this view, right, as kids, like about the United States. It's a land of immigrants, right? Et cetera, et cetera. It's the melting pot. All these analogies, all these things. The issue here, though, is that like the way that the United States has been able to integrate immigrants into the United States and to feel like they are Americans, right? Is there's always been this expectation for assimilation.
Yep.
And not only has there been an expectation for assimilation, but like generally when immigrants would come, like one of the detriments to assimilating would be taking people from one place and then just moving them all to the same other place and then expecting them to assimilate into that new place. No, if they're all there, they can have their own little enclave. They can have their own little community.
Yep.
And this matters, right? Like, so people will say, oh, so what? This is just culture, or this is just this is just that. No, it matters. And it matters because of the following. If you listen to these politicians who represent this community, like the issues of Somalia, the country, are of primary importance in like local elections.
Yeah, and you're not in Somalia. You're in Minnesota.
And so this is a fundamental problem. This is a fundamental problem because we cannot have people who are using the United States political system to conduct policy to favor some other country that they came from. Like that's just not acceptable. Like
Right.
you can't do that. And part of the issue here is like, look, this is counterintuitive, right? It's counterintuitive, but like part of the reason that people tend to assimilate is kind of because of the skepticism of immigrants in the first place. Like we can tell the story about the United States being a land of immigrants and integrating all of these people into the United States. But if you read U.S. history, like it's not, very few of them were welcomed with open arms, right? And I'm not even like highlighting like actual, like conflicts. What I'm talking about is just in general, they were viewed with skepticism. When Germans started showing up in Pennsylvania, in the colonial days, the other colonists were not thrilled about the Germans showing up because they were afraid that the Germans weren't going to integrate into the culture that was already there in the colonies.
Right.
So this isn't an issue about, this is an issue of assimilation. This is an issue of like, can you do these things? And here's the issue. One of the things that can potentially enrich your country from immigration is that people bring things with them when they come here, right? Like, so they bring their traditions, they bring elements of their culture here. And that's great. We have elements of a variety of different cultures here. But whenever you see negative consequences of cultures coming here, then the fundamental problem becomes, well, you have to treat everybody as individuals. And no, they're not coming, like people don't come here with their culture. They just integrate into American culture. This is obviously false. And it's the sort of it's sort of the weird thing that you see in modern discourse where we somehow like celebrate that something is happening while we simultaneously deny that something is happening.
Right.
Right. So it's not happening, but it's good that it is. Right. That's the, that's kind of like the fundamental thing that people harp on. And I think like, the idea that you can just costlessly integrate people into your society is like just historically false. It actually takes effort. And actually having some skepticism of immigrants has probably served the United States well over time because it kind of creates this expectation of assimilation. Right?
Yeah.
And so if you just start saying like, no, you're not allowed to be skeptical, like you're not allowed to, to try to put pressure on people to assimilate, right? Like, then you're not going to get assimilation, especially when people can come in a community, not like as an individual or like with their family, like they're coming with 20 or 40,000 other people.
So why are we as a society, in your opinion, unwilling to sort of push for that assimilation? I was in New York over the weekend. I actually had that conversation, something similar to that conversation with my cab driver, who was like, I was like, so what's, he was like, he was upset. He lives in not the Bronx. Where's Shea Stadium?
Queens.
You'd think I'd remember that, King of Queens. And so we're having a conversation. He goes, I said, how far is this from? I said, I think I flew over Shea. And he's like, yeah, it's right over there. And he goes, they're building a soccer complex and they're building this and they're building this. And he goes, it's terrible. Because they're killing the neighborhoods. And he goes, this used to be a neighborhood and where people lived in the Queens and stuff. And he's like, it's really changed. And I was like, how's it changed? He was like, well, basically, you know, all these people have come in from different places, and instead of people living in Queens, people live in parts of Queens. And it's like what you were saying. It's like, you know, the I don't remember what countries he mentioned. He mentioned multiple countries, and he's a cab driver. He's like, I have buddies that are, you know, Somalian and buddies that are German and whatever. He's like, but it's different now than it used to be. And I said, how long have you lived in New York? He goes, my whole life. Raised my kids here, blah, blah, blah. But so why is it just because it's a politically unpopular thing and you can't win?
Well, there's a variety of things here. I mean, the issue is that I actually think one of the like fundamental difficulties is that people have really tried to turn immigration into like a moral issue. And so what I mean by that is that people will frame immigration as, well, you know, the United States is a wealthy place. And if you're born here, like, you're lucky to have been born in that wealthy place. But like, what if you were born in some terrible place? Like, shouldn't you be able to come to the United States?
Yeah.
And that's how it's framed. I want to actually break this apart piece by piece, because I actually think this is a terrible argument. Okay. And a terrible argument in a way that relates directly to issues of immigration.
Okay.
I could have only been me. This is it. This is me. This is all I ever could have been. If my dad had been hit by a car at 12 years old and died, like, I would not exist. That's obviously true physically, but it's also true metaphysically. So what I mean is that, like, we as Christians do not believe that we are just souls floating around in the ether, just waiting to be assigned to a body.
Right.
That's just not what we believe. And so for me to be so this thought experiment, I understand the purpose of the thought experiment, but if you think about the thought experiment, like, that's not that it just doesn't work, right? Like, you have to have an underlying metaphysical belief about reality to even consider this argument. And the reason I say that is that there's a reason that the United States is rich. The reason that the United States is rich is because we have we have a political system, we have an economic system, we have a legal system, we have the institutions that create the conditions that allow people to go out and be entrepreneurs and create new things and build amazing things and create wealth for them and other people. Okay, but that system didn't just emerge out of nowhere. Okay, the system that we have, all of our institutions have been formed over hundreds and hundreds of years. Right? Like, our political tradition in the United States dates back all the way to the Magna Carta. Right? Where people demanded to outline the rights and obligations of the king. Right? These things, these political traditions, these legal traditions, these this economic system, all of these things are things that emerged at a particular time and place and evolved over time to get to where we are now. And so the fact that you were born here is because your parents were here. and because your parents were part of this system that was created.
Yeah.
And not only that, but even if they were not, like original Englishmen, right? Even if they came here as Germans, even if they came here as Scandinavians, whatever they came here as, when they got here, they adopted those institutions as their own.
They became Americans.
Yes.
Yes.
And the thing is that we have to have an uncomfortable conversation when we talk about why rich countries are rich and poor countries are poor, because what I've just said about institutions, no one would dispute that. No one would dispute it. Everybody would say that that's 100% correct. Like institutions, that's really what creates the conditions for economies to grow. But there's something particular about those institutions. They're Western institutions. They were uniquely created, evolved, and crafted in the Western world.
Yes.
And so that begs the question as to why other places throughout the world have not adopted institutions that have similarly made them rich. Even I'm not even saying the same institutions. I'm just saying institutions that have made them rich. That's an outstanding question that you have to answer. To the left, the answer is simple. It's because the West raped and pillaged the entire rest of the world and stole all their stuff, and so now we're rich and everybody else is poor. That doesn't hold up.
No.
You cannot explain how the average Norwegian went from consuming $3 a day in current dollars in 1800 to about $200 a day today. You can't explain it with like, oh, we just went and stole some other people's stuff. Nope. Sorry. No. You don't experience that dramatic of a change in wealth from stealing other people's stuff. That's not how it works. Like, I don't know if you know this. Like, there are no, like, I've never seen a criminal on like the Forbes 500.
No.
Like, the point here is
the wealth has to be earned. It always does.
Yeah. Wealth is created.
Yes.
Right. And so like, theft is just taking something from somebody else. Yeah. It makes you richer relative to that person. Okay. It's not making you wealthier over time, right? You're wealthier today than you were yesterday, but that's it.
Right.
Also, the other thing is that this idea is entirely wrong. This idea is entirely wrong because many of the places outside of the West that are rich today are rich because they were colonized by the West, which makes this an even more uncomfortable conversation. Because in part, why that colonization, it might have brought a bunch of conflict. It might have brought a bunch of costs. It might have been against what we would consider our modern day values to do these things. But one thing that it did do is it also brought those Western institutions with them when they showed up. And the countries that stuck with those Western institutions have done much better than the ones that haven't. And this is the fundamental issue, is once you start thinking about this, then you start thinking about, okay, when you have a conversation about immigration, sure, go say, hey, you want to come here. But the condition on that is that like we have a way of doing things. That way of doing things works. That's made us prosperous. If you want to be part of that, you buy into it and you do it.
That's what you sign up for.
Yes.
Right.
Literally, when you become a naturalized citizen, you take an oath.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in that oath, you promise your allegiance to the United States and no place else. Right? You
learn the pledge and literally say it.
It doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter where you came from. You can be proud of where you came from. You can love where you came from. But you literally take an oath.
Yeah.
To change your allegiance to the United States.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And so the thing is that when
we say that every single day as a kid, and I think that's part of the problem is that we say these things and we don't listen to the words. We just recite the words.
Well, and one of the problems that we have in our society is that we have this idea that there are different cultures, but there's no good cultures. There are different cultures, but there's no bad cultures. And look,
and that's total horseshit. There are good cultures and there are bad cultures.
Well, and the thing is that when you look at these things, like, you know, it's not all, this is not all relativism, right? It's not all like, well, to each his own, whatever. Okay, first of all, if we're going to say to each his own, then the answer is like, we do our thing, you do your thing, and we leave each other alone. Not like, why don't you come over here and do your thing while we're doing our thing, even when those things are in conflict with each other. Like, and so the point here is that like, the fundamental thing, the fundamental question that motivates our politics, and that has motivated our politics for much longer than people want to believe, is to ask ourselves, who are we? What does it mean to be an American? What does it mean to be here? Right? What does it mean to be a U.S. citizen? What does that require of you? What does that ask of you? These are the things. These are the things that motivate our politics right now. And the reason that they motivate our politics is because what you are seeing is you see these massive waves of immigration. You're not allowed to complain if people don't assimilate. You're not allowed you're not allowed to ask, why you're not allowed to ask why anybody is doing what they're doing. You're not allowed to see the corruption that goes on in some of these communities. You're not allowed to see the corruption that, even if these communities are doing nothing wrong, you're not allowed to see the corruption of the politicians and all the people who run these NGOs who are just profiting off just finding people in other countries and bringing them here. Like, remember the stories of Joe Biden, like just flying people in from like Central and South America? Like, they were just flying people in to the United States and settling them here. Okay, well, I want everybody to think about this. Okay, to get flown here, somebody's got to fly the plane. Somebody has to have the plane. Okay, those people have to be paid. Okay, then when you get here, somebody's got to take those people somewhere. Those people have to be paid. They have to stay somewhere. Those people have to be paid. Where is all this money coming from? By and large, a lot of this money was coming from the federal government. And so the federal government is just paying people to do these things. And so what you're doing is then you find out that a lot of these NGOs that are doing this stuff, they're all run by Democrats and family members of, politicians in the Democratic Party who are being enriched by bringing these people in.
Yeah.
And claiming, oh, this is just humanitarianism. Like, we're just doing what's best. Like, think about how terrible it would be to like live in Venezuela. Like, they have a dictator and communism and it's terrible. Yeah, I agree. Okay. But like, that doesn't mean that like you get to profit off of just like flying them into the country and like settling them here. And also like, when was the law passed to do that? When did Congress authorize you to do something like that?
Never happened.
When did these are the things, is that like there's just all these things that are taking place completely outside of the political system, and people are fed up. And they're fed up. And the issue with immigration is like, yes, it's fundamentally, at a deep level, it's about like, who are we as a people? Like, what do we want as a society? Who do we want to be? Like, what expectations do we want to have for people? Like, those are questions that matter. And, but then we don't even have to get to that deep of a level, because as you dig into a lot of these stories, what you see is it's just nonstop corruption, fraud, abuse, and theft. Sometimes, like in the Somali case, it's coming from the immigrant community, but a lot of times it's actually coming from the people who are here in the United States. They are just pillaging the treasury for their own profit.
Yes.
And it has to stop. It has to stop. Like, we can't go on like this. I mean, I think we fundamentally misunderstood like what the purpose of Doge was, right? So like, because, and in fairness, what they sort of sold us on with Doge was like, oh, we're going to find all this government waste and we're going to like, shut it down or whatever. First of all, it seems very clear to me in hindsight that what Doge was is that there were a couple of particularly egregious agencies within the federal government that were essentially like money laundering operations. And so part of the purpose was to identify those and shut them down through the political process. The other element of this is that what a lot of what they found was that all payments from the federal government come through the Treasury Department. And one of the things that they found that like payments were being made by the Treasury Department with no sort of memo or message attached to them. So if you're looking at this as a third-party observer, you have no idea where this money is going. Like you know where the money's going, you don't know what it's used for. What is this money for? Right?
That's how most businesses are run.
Yeah, if you ran a company like this, like you would be like the Securities and Exchange Commission would be at your door. You know, if you ran a publicly traded company and you were and you know you had an accounting system where you couldn't explain certain expenditures, you would have would have a crackdown.
I think that's what infuriates me most as a taxpayer, if I'm honest. The thing that infuriates me the most as a taxpayer is not the exorbitant taxes. It's not the fraud involved in the tax where your dollars are taxed over and 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 over to the point of it being absurd. I think what really bothers me the most as a taxpayer is that if I as a citizen was as loose with my paperwork and my record keeping as if I were as loose as with that as the federal government is, I'd go to prison. Like they'd come after me. At a minimum, they'd garnish my wages. They would take my home. They would freeze my bank accounts. I would be punished. And yet, that's the way that it appears that many elements of our government are run, and nothing happens. And if you say something about it, people go, "Oh, well, that's just the way it is." No, it shouldn't be. We should run the country like it's a business. There should be records, and people should be able to see where their tax dollars goes. You're a citizen. I know I'm not completely on the exact same topic that you're on, but as you talk about it, that's what kind of boils me a little bit, is that I give, by the time it's all over, 50% of your money to taxes. Where's it go? I think it's a fair question. If you were investing in a company and you gave and gave and gave, at some point when you asked the company, say, "Well, show me where my money goes," they should be able to. Well, this is where it went specifically.
Well, and this is the thing too, is that this is part of like what's going on. You know, when people talk about like the uniparty, when people complain about the deep state, when they talk about all this stuff, like they're all talking about the same fundamental issue. Is like, the stuff we've been talking about today is about immigration, which is just a microcosm of all of these other issues.
Yeah.
But the basic idea is that you have people who are the argument about the uniparty is essentially like, okay, you have this ruling class who essentially has this sort of like wink, wink, nod, nod agreement, right? Like to look the other way when they're doing the things that enrich them, right? So that they'll do the same thing to you. And I think that's the fundamental problem. Like the wealthiest county in the United States is suburban DC. Make that make sense. Like traditionally, like we would honor people who served in public office. And the reason that you were honoring people who served in public office is because had they not served, they could have had a job that paid them a lot more money.
They would have enriched themselves greatly. Right.
And now
they sacrificed to serve their country.
And now what you have is you have the people who are in and connected to the government who are making the high incomes. There's no thank you for public service anymore. It actually nauseates me when I see people like, thank these like national politicians. Oh, thank you for your your time honored service and blah, blah, blah. And there's no consequences for these people.
No, that's my point.
There's no consequences. Like I'm going to throw somebody under the bus because it gives me great joy. Ben Sasse is a worthless politician. Ben Sasse is a guy who got elected to the Senate in Nebraska. He talked a big game. He acted like he was going to, show up. He was going to be a big difference maker, right? And then he quit.
Didn't he become the chancellor at University of Florida?
Yeah, yeah. And then he was forced out. You know why he was forced out? Because he dramatically increased his budget and he was accused of wasting a bunch of money. But you know what happened to Ben Sasse? Ben Sasse last week, he just got a job at a DC think tank. Just hired him.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
big idea man, Ben Sass. Big idea man. I've never heard him have an original idea in his life. Basically, what he's done is he has memorized every like Republican talking point from like the Reagan years, and he just like shows up at things and he just repeats them. No, go home, get a real job. Like, I'm sorry, like this is ridiculous. Like, we just have welfare programs for these worthless people who don't provide any value for society, and they just go around and they just collect checks and waste people's money. Like, this is a guy who, you know, acted like, higher education needed dramatic reform, and he barely lasted as a university president.
Yeah, higher education does need reform, but not the kind of not expanded budgets.
No, and that's the thing. Is like he talked a big game, and then he showed up and he just spent a bunch of money on himself. Apparently,
doesn't know how to, yeah.
I mean, and so this is the thing, is that this is what people are tired of, because everywhere you look, this is what you see. You just see people robbing the treasury. That's all you see. You see people just looking around and just robbing the treasury. They're just looking around and going, "This is, this is my way to make money, is to, essentially take money from taxpayers and put it into my own pocket." And then when they can't do that anymore, then there's some DC think tank who will give them a job and pay them a bunch of money, because their donors recognize the person's name.
All right, so last thing, and you don't have enough time to dive into this, but educate me quickly. We can talk about it more next time. What is the Pete Hegseth is dealing with some accusations from the media is coming after him, right, about the way he's running the Defense Department. What's going on there? You got to forgive me. Over the last 2 months, I've been completely checked out with the real world.
So this was a completely weird scenario. Okay. And so the weird scenario is like there were 6 Democratic politicians who came out and released a weird video. And the video was kind of like aimed at like the troops. And it was kind of like telling them, like, if you get an unlawful order, you really shouldn't follow it. And like, like these kinds of things. But that video came out. And when it came out, the reaction was kind of like, what the hell is this? Right? Because like,
what unlawful orders are you talking about? Right.
And so there was nothing that anybody was really talking about. And then all of these people went on, like all of the cable news channels and all that kind of stuff. And when then they were asked questions about it, they would just act like, oh, this is like purely hypothetical, right? They're just like, well, we're not saying that like this has happened already. We're just saying that like we see that it's like possible or likely that it could happen and under this administration, and we're just we're just trying to educate people. And in fact,
been a few good men.
And in fact, Mark Kelly, the senator from Arizona, actually kind of like got in trouble about this, because they were saying like, isn't this going to actually confuse troops? Like, you served in the military, like you think that some 18-year-old kid on the front lines, like, you think that he needs to be thinking about, is this lawful before he does it? Like, if somebody gets an obviously unlawful order, like they know not to follow it.
Right.
But now you're telling them that even if their commander tells them to do it, that their commanding officer tells them to do it, that they should think about it first. And they should think about the legal implications. Like, well, I don't know, how many of these guys have a background in like, international law or like rules of engagement or something like that, right? They've been taught basic, principles of those things, right? But the thing is that the whole thing seemed crazy. It seemed completely crazy. Like, where is this coming from? And then you saw it. Because their playbook is the same. It never stops. It's always the same. About 4 or 5 days later, the Washington Post, a reporter who's known to just be a megaphone for the intelligence community, comes out and reports on a story that's like that claims that when they bombed one of those drug boats in the Caribbean,
the Venezuelan boats,
yeah,
okay,
that Hegseth ordered them to kill everyone as part of the mission, and then when they bombed the boat, there were 2 survivors, and then and they saw that there were 2 survivors, and then they killed them also.
Okay,
and there are very strict rules about this, right? So like if you shoot down a plane or you destroy a boat or something like that, and people give up, they surrender. You can't kill
them. You take them as prisoners.
Okay, but the issue here is like, that story became the news because then all of a sudden the way that the media reports this is, oh, just a week ago, these 6 Democratic politicians just released this video about this issue, and here it is in the news. We've already got an example of the. Oh yeah, wow, what a coincidence! I wonder how that happened. I wonder how the timing just happened to work out that way, right? Also, as you dug into the situation, first of all, it sounded like Hegseth actually had nothing to do with it whatsoever. And then also, as you dug into it, it also sounded like the boat was not completely destroyed. These men were thrown from the boat. They tried to get back on the boat to save the cargo of the boat, and then they hit him again.
Okay.
Which would not violate any international law. Like
they weren't surrendering.
No, that's evidence of like you're trying to continue the mission, right?
Right.
And so, but the thing is that you can see very, very clearly kind of like what they're doing is like they're continuing to try this playbook. They're continuing to try to push these boundaries. And at the end of the day, what they're really trying to do is they're trying to undermine the military. Yes, they would love to get Hegseth. Yes, they would love to do these things, but they're trying to undermine the military. They're trying to get people in the military not to obey orders. Yep. That's what they're trying to do. And they're trying to undermine their faith in the leadership. And this is dangerous. This is really, really bad. But it's also very clearly orchestrated and fake. And the media just runs with it because that's what they do. But this is the same playbook that they would use with Trump, with the Russia stuff, is that what they would do is like the FBI would plant a story in the Washington Post, and then they would go to a judge and ask for a warrant citing the fact that the Washington Post had also reported that they had evidence and that the Washington Post had also, reported on it. Well, those are not two separate sources. That was actually the exact same source. Yep. And so now they're just doing the same thing. Like they're making this video and it calls to attention that like, hey, maybe the military is doing something they shouldn't be doing. And everybody's kind of like, well, but they're not. Like we haven't seen anything. And then miraculously there's a story about it. Like this is dangerous stuff. Like they're doing this for political purposes, but it's extremely dangerous to behave in this way. It's completely dangerous and irresponsible. And, and what makes it worse is that some of those politicians served in the military or served at intelligence agencies. So they know better.
Yeah.
And they're doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And so that sort of tells you maybe a little bit more about the situation is that, and that why people should be a little bit more skeptical of what's going on, because that's just not, that's not responsible. It's undermining the military. It's, and it's undermining, public opinion. But also there's this other weird question. Like some of the very same people in the Democratic Party who cheer every time we drop a bomb in the Middle East, some of the people who cheer every single time that we do that are like super, super concerned that we are like blowing up drug boats in the Caribbean. Why?
Yeah, Webb Moore says, I don't understand why this is a story. This is the way coups start, and I'm a retired military officer.
Yeah. No, this is textbook like color revolution stuff. This is like you start to you start to create the conditions where like during an election you can kind of seize power, whether you kind of win the election or not.
Yeah.
And this is and this is how this is what you see in those instances.
Andy in Sugarland says protections provided by the Geneva Convention don't necessarily apply to FTOs, which cartels have been designated by the administration. Yeah, I mean, why are we sympathizing with criminals who are trying to bring illegal things to our country?
Yeah, if you were trying,
why is that where the
if you were upset about this, the only way you could be upset about this is like if you were thinking that is that you're thinking that like maybe we've misidentified the boats or something, right? Like
right.
That, but
But when it becomes clear that we did not misidentify the boats.
Well, no one's even alleging that. They're not even alleging that.
Right.
Like they're admitting that these are what they are. But you also see too.
So we should be celebrating the military with their precision strikes.
But you also see this because this is the other brand of journalism that we're going to have to talk about all the time now. We already mentioned it before. I saw I saw a story that Venezuelan fishermen are very concerned right now. They're also anxious.
Oh,
so
yes.
They're very anxious right now because,
because we're just out there randomly just bombing.
And so and that's the thing is that's kind of like reveals the preposterousness of it all, is that when it gets to like that level, like you realize kind of like what the game is here, right? Yeah. You realize what's really,
for sure,
what they're really up to. And I think that's the real trouble. And I think that, these people who are engaging in these kinds of things are playing a very, very dangerous game. And the people sort of like, who sort of like romanticize about this stuff, like I don't think a lot of these people have ever been in a fight. I don't think that a lot of these people have ever worn a gun on their hip and walked around in public. Like I don't think that these people understand like what true violence means.
Oh,
there's no like everybody, like I'm dead serious when I say this. I'm dead serious when I say this. If you think that like we're headed for violence and you think that that's a good thing, this is what I urge you to do. Walk around one day, just one day, with a gun on your hip. You, in a lot of states in the United States, you can constitutionally carry. Just try it one day. Because you walk around like that and you see and you recognize like what you have, and you think about under what circumstances would I pull this out? Under what circumstances would I use this? Like, what would happen if I had to pull this out? What would happen if I use this? That'll inform your mind really, really quickly. Like that will, like you will be acutely aware of what violence means. What happens if somebody sees that I have it and they pull it out on me? Right?
Yeah.
These are things that, you become acutely aware of. And all of a sudden that violence isn't like this thing in your head that you're thinking about of like sort of like righteous vengeance, against your political opponents. All of a sudden that becomes something that's real, something that's tangible, and something that you don't want any part of. I promise you, you do not want any part of that. You don't want to live like that. You don't want to have to live like that. Like I'm not saying like you want to walk around with that's fine. But like, right. But like you don't want to be your option.
You don't want to walk around with that mindset, right?
Well, it should be your option. Yeah. Like if you want to conceal carry, like that should be your option. Like you should do that. But like you shouldn't have to do that for your own safety.
Right.
You shouldn't have to live in a world where like if you forget your gun when you leave the house, like you are in danger. You don't want to live like that. And these are the things that these people just don't take seriously because they've never been punched in the face. They've never had a gun pointed at them. They've never had to think about they've never had to been in a situation where they had to make a decision about like what is the appropriate use of force to use here. They've never had to do those things. And so they just fantasize about, oh, how great this will be when our opponents are all gone and we just defeat them, through violence. No, you don't want that. I promise you, you do not want that.
We will stop there. Before I wish you a Merry Christmas, I would like to say that I am thinking today of the Venezuelan fishermen and also of the Somali anxiety in Minneapolis. I know Josh here doesn't care. I do. I feel it. I feel anxiety for the Somalians in Minneapolis. This is an anxious time, and I feel a tremendous amount of empathy and sorrow for the Venezuelan fishermen who are just out there trying to catch fish in the Caribbean, and we're just drones and bombs just hit. I mean, it's crazy. And also, Lane, in the event that anything he said offended you, I'm sorry. You don't deserve that.
I don't apologize.
You are virtuous. Okay. You're Lane, virtuous. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Hope you have a great one. We 2 weeks from today is Christmas Eve, so we're probably not doing a show on Christmas Eve. That's my guess. And after that is New Year's Eve, and my hope, and the hope I'm sure of all of Ole Miss people out there, is that I'll be in New Orleans that day doing some work. So might be the first part of the year
Yeah.
before we get back. So if that's the case, happy holidays. Congratulations to your son, Carson, All-State kicker.
Yep.
All-State kicker. How about that? You know what it is? It's because I coached him in Little League. Direct correlation.
It was that changed the trajectory.
That year of coaching baseball, I just remember looking at him and saying, Carson, either get your head straight or you're never going to be an all-state kicker. And he looked at me and said, I want to be an all-state kicker. And I said, well, then get your head straight. And the rest is history. And here we are. It's incredible. It's incredible. All right. So happy New Year. Merry Christmas to you, to your family. Thanks to everybody who's been watching the show. We'll be back this show next year. Obviously, a lot of MPW digital programming between now and then. So enjoy your evening. Take care.